Hello, mic check 1 2 1 2. Welcome in to the Keep It 100 podcast. I'm your host, Casey Huckle. I want to thank you for tuning in. And in this introduction, I'd like to obviously tell you what Keep It 100 is all about. So there are many lines, quotes, sayings, expressions, idioms, adages, truisms, pieces of advice, etc. that I live by and have much gratitude for. And that's what gave birth to this podcast, Keep It 100. I want to celebrate these lines for giving me more perspective on life. Maybe you're thinking, why am I calling this podcast Keep It 100? Well, it comes down to math. For the next year, I'll drop 2 episodes per week, focusing on one quote per episode to celebrate, where I'll dive into its history, including whom it's credited to, who popularized the line if that's necessary, and the context surrounding the quote if that's available. And lastly, I'll explain what it means to me. So you might be wondering what about the math. Well, 2 episodes a week for a year leaves 104 episodes. But just like you, I need 2 weeks of vacation. So for the next year, I'm keeping it 100 for y'all. These lines could be from a song, a speech, a poem, the Bible, maybe even from me. So without further ado, let's begin. You can't have the yin without the yang, my friend, is the first line from my podcast. This is the first episode. And that line is delivered by Pusha T on Comeback Baby, which is a song that can be found on his latest album, Daytona, which came out in 2018. And like a lot of the lines, like every line I'll be telling you about in this podcast, it struck me when I first heard it. You can't have the yin without the yang, my friend. And it came out of nowhere. You know, obviously when we listen to music, we may zone out at times, but I probably was. But when I first heard that line, I remember it exactly. A very memorable line. Exactly how I felt when I heard it. It got me thinking. That's why it made the cut on this podcast. So what Pusha T is referencing is based out of, obviously, is a reference to the yin yang from Chinese philosophy, and to use Push's life as an example, I'm sure he was thinking about how he needs balance in the dope game, which he talks about a lot, raps about a lot in his music. And to use his life as an example, he said he's made a lot of money from selling dope. And the upside of that is that he's able to make a lot of money, right? But the downside is maybe that the police might catch on to him because his drugs are in high demand. So the downside of that is he might feel more paranoid about getting caught, might get arrested. But the upside, obviously, is that he makes a lot of money. He gets a lot of attention, right? So that's an example of how you need, for in terms of perspective, you need to keep that balanced mind, that perspective on whatever you're doing in life to give you balance and make you live like a happier, healthier life. And in terms of my situation, I wasn't able to find out anything about. I would assume that this is an original line that he came up with. I had never heard it before, and that might be why I'm so struck by it, because Pusha T is talking about something I've never done. I never had to do. I never had to sell drugs, right? So the way, obviously, that's what's so great about music is that people from different corners of the world can relate to others through not only instrumentation, the beats, but also through the language. And I can't relate to him completely, but at least I was able to, with this line, relate to my life. And at the time I heard it, I was very depressed. And it gave me a lot of insight and perspective on how depression, though it may seem very bad to be going through something like that, and trust me, it was, I was able to think about the upside of being depressed and how I can now empathize better with people who've been in pain. And so that's kind of the upside to the downside of having depression. So that's why I chose this line for my first episode. It might be the best line I've ever heard in rap. It surprised me, and it got me thinking more than maybe any other line I'd heard in a long time. So you can't have the yin without the yang, my friend. Just to recap, it's from Chinese philosophy, yin-yang. One side must complement the other, and complement might not be the best word, but basically there are two sides to everything. Two sides to both sides of the coin is what a lot of people say, and that's very similar. So I hope with this episode I was able to teach you something about the Chinese philosophy and how Pusha T used it to give people perspective on life. See you next time. Wait. Before you go, first I want to thank you for listening to Keep It 100. It's been a pleasure. Second, I wanted to beg you to rate and review Keep It 100 on iTunes and or Apple Podcasts. And you know what? You don't even have to say much. You can say whatever you want. You can give it 1 star if you'd like. I just need, like everyone else, attention. So that's all. Keeping it 100 with you. Again, I'm your host, Casey Huckle, and hopefully I'll catch you next time. Cheers.